I'm going to bend this two tabs away from each other because I believe it's too close, and that's why the lift rack stop lever is not able to drop enough to lift up the rack. I'm going to put this wire back on. Now put the rack back on. And so now let's see what happens. See, now it's actually lifting the rack. The reason why I noticed it is because this was coming in and out as I rotated the wheel. And that's why I did what I did, because the rack stop lever was not able to lift the rack. And again, this was bouncing in and off of this lever. And that's how, from experience, is why I knew what to do. And this, it's all from experience, from me taking these clocks apart and putting them together and trying to figure out what's wrong with them. But let's get started. This is a Regula 25. This shows as it's a 25. 25, it's a 1-day movement. 34, it's an 8-day movement. 71, it's a 1-day movement, but it's used for bigger clocks, meaning this rod right here, which holds the bird on, it's going to be extremely tall. It's used for bigger clocks. And then the 72 is a 8-day movement that's used for bigger clocks, and it has a governor wheel outside of the movement for the music. The 71 could have music also, but again, it's going to be outside the movement. Unlike what some people think, I have never physically touched a 71 or a 72 movement. This shows that it was made by the Cuckoo Clock Manufacturing Company. There is no date on after the 25. In 1970, Regula, which is a trademark for Berger, who created these movements, in 1970, they started putting a 2-digit year or a letter code that identifies when the movement was made. So because it doesn't have that information on it, and because it doesn't have a count wheel would be right here versus the rack and snail. A count wheel, according with the NAWCC, was quit by all manufacturers in the 1950s, even though since then I did find one cuckoo clock for sale on Goodwill. They had a count wheel, but there was a date on the door that said 1960. And because it doesn't have this DRGM patent number that was given out in the 50s, I'm going to say that this movement here was made in the 1960s. But getting to the parts, we're going to have to take this clock apart. I'm going to have to clean it. I don't want to put the bird into my cleaning solution. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel, and in there I got experimenting with with cleaning solutions, and so you can check that out. I already got the clips, the E-clips off of these, but First thing we're going to do is take the rack off. The rack is what is used to count and tell you the hours. The rack stop lever raises the rack as I turn the chime side grate wheel, strike side grate wheel. So I already got the E-clip off, so I'm going to take the rack off. This is the rack. This lever right here that's on the rack falls onto the snail, and this tab on this rack has to hit the snail just right. If this tab is not bent here at a 90 degrees, it will fall behind the snail. And I'm sorry, this is going to be a few parts, and it's going to take me a while to describe all these parts and what they do. But if this tab is not bent at a 90 degrees, when the rack stop lever gets out of the way, the rack will fall between the snail. Let me get it to fall. And it's going to go all the way down here, and the rack stop lever is not going to be able to lift it back up. So if your clock keeps cuckooing, this might be one of the reasons why, and it might be a simple fix as to bending this tab. This is a snail. The reason why it's called a snail is because it looks like a conical snail. This gear is driven from this gear right here, which is the minute wheel with the minute pinion. And this minute wheel with minute pinion, they're normally plastic. The pinion gear has to be up in the air like this. If it is turned around the other way, then the snail is just going to rotate, and it's never going to do its job. So make sure that you put it upright, like so. On older clocks, antique cuckoo clocks, the minute wheel with minute pinion has a compression washer that goes down on there first, and then this goes on, and then a tapered pin fits in a hole on this. And when you turn your hands, the whole purpose behind that compression washer on the older cuckoo clocks is to make sure that the wheel, it's not a rack, it's not a snail, it's a different wheel without this conical snail. If I was to take this conical snail off, that's what it would look like. But as you turn the hands, if there's not enough pressure on that compression washer, as you rotate the minute hand past 12, the hand will just drop to 6. Or it might drop at, as it gets to 1, it might drop to 6. If it's too tight, that compression washer is too tight. If you can't turn the hands easily enough to set your clock, then that compression washer is too tight. If that compression washer is too loose, as the time progresses, after it gets past 12, the minute hand will just drop 10, 15, or even 30 minutes. So make sure that compression washer on the older cuckoo clocks, not on the newer regular 25 clocks, is set just right. You know it's set just right is when you put it on, when you have to put a little bit of pressure, but not a lot of pressure, to put that tapered pin in. I didn't mean to get off subject, but I just wanted to talk about that. We're at 10 minutes. I'm going to pause this, stop this video, and we'll continue on with the next video. Let's just go ahead and finish this section here first, the front. This lever right here is called the lift lock. Sorry, I got my book here. I just want to make sure I'm telling you the right parts. I was right. It's called the lift lock lever. And the whole purpose behind the lift lock lever, it's got two different pieces right here. This bottom piece catches this wheel right here, and it depends whether it's on the half hour or the hour. On the half hour, it lifts the rack stop lever just enough to rotate one time. On the hour, it lifts it enough to rotate to drop onto the rack, which drops onto the snail enough to count the hours. If your clock is not cuckooing on the half hour, or is cuckooing too many times on the half hour, that's because the separation between this lever and this lever is not correct. If your clock is not cuckooing on the hour or the half hour, it's because the separation between this lever and this lever is not correct. I have another video out there that explains this. On this particular lever, you have this arm right here. And this lever right here is used for a clock with music, because that hole right there connects to the wire to activate the little band that comes out for music. I don't need it on this clock, but anyway, so we're going to take this off. And again, this is held on by a compression, by an E-clip or compression fitting. In this case, it's held on by a compression E-clip that takes those special pliers. This is a spring to help bring the rack stop lever down. If this spring is missing, then your rack stop lever will not go down enough. And when the rack stop lever, when you put this clock all back together, when you get to this point, you want a few things to happen. You want this tab to be into the lifting cam with standby. I'm having a brain fart here. I want to make it's called lifting cam with gathering pallet. It looks like a Pac-Man to me. This lifting cam with gathering pallet, and that's what that pen is. Gathering pen, sorry. Lifting cam with gathering pen. That gathering pen lifts up the rack. And sometimes if your rack is not lifting up and everything else is right, it's because this gathering pen is bent too far away, or it could be bent too close to the rack. It has to be just right in order to function properly. But anyway, getting back to this, when you put this thing all back together, you want the rack stop lever pin here to be in the lifting cam with lifting pin. Lifting cam with gathering pin, or what I like to call Pac-Man. It looks like a Pac-Man. It's better for me to explain it to people that it has to be into the mouth of the Pac-Man. You want the third wheel warning pin, which is the wheel that is connected to this governor fan, to be touching the tab, this tab onto the rack stop lever. And so if it's not, then this will never close. So anyway, you might have to take the lifting cam with gathering pin off and reposition it. The way that you reposition it is you turn the grate wheel until the pin, which you can see it right here, is hitting this tab, and then you hold these gears with your finger and then push this cam onto its arbor so it falls, this pin falls into the cam's mouth, or Pac-Man's mouth. I don't like taking these off, because if you take this off and put it back on, take it off, put it back on, take it off, put it back on, eventually you're going to wear this hole out, and you're going to need to put a bushing in this cam's hole. And so when I service a clock, I don't take that off unless I absolutely have to, because it's not timed right. When I'm talking timed right, I'm talking this pin has got to be hitting this tab, and then this pin has to be into the groove portion of this lifting cam with lifting pin. Lifting cam with gathering pin. Again, sorry, I'm hope I'm not confusing you. We'll just go with Pac-Man, because that's what it looks like. It looks like a Pac-Man. If you don't know what a Pac-Man is, Google it, and because that's what this thing looks like. It looks like a Pac-Man. So also, when you take this stuff apart, see, when I'm lifting this up, it falls freely. When you are taking this stuff apart and you bend these, and when you lift it up and it don't fall freely, that's because it's bent, and you're going to have to straighten it out. Or it might be because the compression washer is too close to the end of this. Again, I don't have the compression washers on here that takes that special tool. It might be too close. It has to have a little bit of gap, just like a paper with gap, because if it's too close, you're not going to be able to lift it up and let it fall freely like that. So that's the first video. We're going to take this spring off, which is easy to do. We're going to take the rack stop lever off. So we'll see you in the next video.